Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is the hand of God. Whether we call it God or nature or consciousness, or whatever else we care to name, a force that is greater than ourselves, there's profound power in our recognition of that energy or surrender to that energy, connection with it, that can be profoundly transformative. So that's what we're going to have a chat about today. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. Great to have this Monday morning with you and everybody else who's joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about the hand of God. Anyway, before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Rub your palms vigorously against one another until you feel that friction, that temperature, that tingling. And then as you release your palms, feel the tingling of that energy and allow those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome. Good morning, Isabel. So good to have you here with us this morning. So this morning we're talking about the hand of God. And it's really whatever you want to call it, some greater force, whether it's life itself or consciousness or Gaia or nature or whatever you choose to call it. But when we can connect to that energy and find ourselves as part of that something greater, allow ourselves to be held by that invisible hand, there's powerful transformation that is available to us. And this conversation comes from a story about that I recently heard about a young woman who has been having extreme struggles with bulimia and cutting and feeling tremendously suicidal and lost, and who had a revelation connecting to, for her, it was God, connecting to God and feeling held and protected, and that it profoundly transformed her experience, where from all this deep angst and pain, she was moved into a place of peace and ease and grace. And it's really quite remarkable that, this person experienced God speaking to her and protecting her. And that changed everything. And so Rosalind says, surrender to acceptance of the outcome when there is uncertainty, different from having faith. I don't know that it is different from having faith, because I'm not talking about necessarily It's interesting. What's coming through my head, I'm just going to speak it. Thy will, not mine, or thy will be done. But whether we come to that notion from a place of traditional religiosity. Good morning, Lisa. So good to have you here with us this morning. Whether we come to that notion from a sense of traditional religiosity, or whether we're connecting to the life force itself, maybe it's all the same, whatever we choose to name it. When we talk here about connecting to the song of your soul, and your essential being, it may all be the same, whether we call it God or our soul or life or whatever. But that when we connect to that greater energy that is moving through us, that there can be a profound sense of ease and peace and grace that is transformative, so that we don't feel like an isolated particle floating around in a meaningless, empty universe, but that we have this sense of deeper connection. And it's really interesting because I'm connecting back to prayer, which is really interesting because I did not grow up in a religious family at all. In fact, our family eschewed religion deeply. And what I remembered over the past few days, what I've remembered is, as a kid, I used to pray all the time. I would have, as a teenager, I'd have these very elaborate prayers that would bubble up in my consciousness. And I know that our actions can be prayer. I guess we get to discuss what prayer is, but for me, it's not a begging and pleading, please, please fix this, please make that happen kind of thing, but it's being prayerful. Rosalind says prayer different from meditation. That's a good question. I think prayer can be a meditation. Maybe meditation may be a broader thing. Although maybe just the act of connecting is prayerful, or is prayer. Like we can make eating a prayer. And I'm talking about more a space of gratitude and appreciation. This is not an area of deep schooling for me, I can tell you that. But what I've noticed lately in terms of prayer that I've become conscious of for myself, it's, may I learn the language of nature. May I better learn the language of life itself, the essence of life. May I be a greater expression of the purity of life and of whatever the purpose is that's meant to be moving through me. Good morning, Wendy. I don't think you've ever chimed in. How lovely to have you joining us. So Wendy says, I hear you on such a deep level. I too had this transformative experience. I, like you too, have reconnected to prayer. Sometimes my day is a walking prayer. I can pray in so many ways through even how we treat our bodies, others, and the earth. Lord, teach us to pray. Beautiful, beautiful. Yes, I think that that life is a prayer. It can very well be a prayer, like a reverence, a respect, a connecting. And that's kind of how I'm imagining or deepening into this notion of prayer rather than something that is specifically religious. And Rosalind says prayer for an outcome versus meditation to be aware of the present moment. Big time difference for sure, Rosalind. That prayer for an outcome, I'm not really talking about that. That's where, we're wanting something to be different. Please forgive me. I promise I'll do better. If only you'll do this, this, and this, like something outside myself creating the reality for me, right? Wendy says, yes, you are a conduit. You popped up on my feed. I'm grateful for that. Well, I'm grateful you joined in, Wendy. That's awesome. And so I guess we can have, life can be a constant meditation, constant prayer in that respect is maybe presence, being present in the moment. Maybe presence is the pure prayer. I actually, let me see, it's interesting. I think I've mentioned that I have been meeting on Sundays with a friend who is a really brilliant Torah scholar. And again, I'm not religious, but I am deeply, deeply fascinated by all the levels of wisdom and information that are encoded in the Torah. And it's mind-blowing, the depth and dimension of the connection with physics and quantum physics and all kinds of other stuff. But anyway, the other day I woke up with the word avodah in my mind, which is a Hebrew word, and I don't speak Hebrew. And it means prayer, service, and work. I think, let me just see, I'm gonna look it up just to be sure, but I thought how very interesting. Vocation, calling, and service. Let me just see. So when we are more deeply connected to our deeper soul, we can get all kinds of messages, we can get all kinds of guidance, we get all kinds of comfort that enables us to move through life with more grace. I'm not finding what I was looking for here, but here we go. Sorry. Work, worship, and service. So interesting when we think about, our work, like the work of our soul. And I see prayer as something different from worship. But maybe that's because I have a jaded idea about traditional religion. I don't know. But what I'm talking about when I'm talking about prayer is connecting. And maybe there's this place of open heart. Maybe that's part of it, is to be open-heartedly present to the miraculousness of the world we inhabit, to be connected to that, and to be in the space. We often talk of gratitude and how that's a very elevated state, to be in a state of gratitude. because it opens, there's the open-heartedness that is attendant to that. And so with I think that we can be thinking about prayer, like, or gratitude as prayer. So Wendy says, prayer is a weapon and we are prayer warriors. I have to tell you, Wendy, just like for me, we're so acclimated to this notion of warriors and weapons and fighting and opposition that I have to tell you, I have a visceral reaction to that notion of prayer as a weapon. So I'm going to read on here, just giving you my visceral reaction to that. The purpose is to lift the consciousness of humanity. It is the opposite of what the world offers. It's alchemy. Yes, so when we talk about love instead of hate, fear, or anger, let's find words other than weapons. Like prayer is a balm, a salve, a healer, a unifier. Anyway, I love that you say it's alchemy. I agree 100%. Love instead of hate, fear, or anger. Service instead of pride. Simplicity instead of things. Beautiful, beautiful, Wendy. Physics and science are tools of the divine. Well, physics and science are our attempt to understand the wheel works of the universe, right? Trying to understand how all this is working. We are energy manipulators shaping human consciousness at the subatomic level. I love it. Traditional religion has hurt some people, but heart-centered, connected, worshiping frees our hearts and souls and connects us, and it's gratitude which transforms everything. Beautiful, beautiful sentiment, Wendy. I love it. And when we talk about heart-centered connection, that is, I believe there's real power in prayer and authentic prayer, and we can also be talking about that as focused intention. And particularly when we can fuel that intentionality with our open-heartedness. So in the art of manifestation, the mobilizing factor is emotion. And where is that coming from? It's coming from the heart, right? So as we connect from our heart to gratitude or to beauty or to the real magic and mystery that we take for granted in our day-to-day lives, we become blind to the wonder and the miraculousness of our existence. When we enable ourselves to connect to that, we're connecting to the creative power of the cosmos. We're becoming part of that greater whole, like it, and that river of life energy, that flow of life energy. So in thinking about this whole thing, it's very interesting to me because there are so many religious traditions that have taken us in so many different directions, and and have been converted to dogma, and perhaps lost the connection to the essence that they were meant to express or connect to. So Wendy says, I understand where you're coming from with your reaction to warrior, etc., as its perspective, but I'm relating to spiritual warfare, and it is the opposite of world warfare, as its weapons are love, service, etc., and they alchemize and diffuse, and it's a beauty to behold. I agree. I just have a hard time with the idea of warfare, because I think warfare is part of an old paradigm. I really do. Conquer, conquest, battle, all of that is part of a paradigm that is so over. It just, I think that we get to transform our language. I think language is really important. And when we talk about battle or conquest or war, or whether it's spiritual, I mean, the oh my gosh, the Inquisition, or like the oh my gosh, I'm not remembering the word at the moment, but spiritual warfare has been such a horrible scourge on the planet, with people trying to stomp out other people's beliefs in the name of spirituality and spiritual warfare. And it was warfare, and it was violence and domination and control. And so I think we get to create new language. I think it's really an important thing to do, to look at finding new words. So maybe we get to collectively generate these new words. I'm not sure what they are. I don't know, because we have so many of these glorified images of war, whether, particularly in spirituality, right? Not a good thing, because it's the foundation of war is domination and control and conquest, and it's pervasive in so many of our metaphors and our foundational way way of relating. I think we get to move into inclusiveness. We get to move into recognizing, it's interesting, in our conversation around Torah, we've been talking about evil and how and I haven't quite wrapped my head around it, but that's also part of the whole picture. That the whole picture is encompasses everything, and that the more we're able to elevate our consciousness, the less need there is for domination and control. That there's maybe a radical alignment, or a elevation is all that I can think of, like that there's an emergence of a higher frequency and consciousness. There's a lot of war and conflict in our traditional religious literature, right? Pretty much across all in all kinds of areas, right? In all different religions. And what if we have come to a place where we get to evolve beyond that? You know, what if there's a whole new paradigm available to us, and the metaphors of war don't apply anymore? So if it's not spiritual warfare, because really, you know, the evil that's been done in the name of spiritual warfare is just beyond comprehension. So what if it's not spiritual warfare? What if it's spiritual awakening? What if it's radical awakening? You know, what if it's a radical transformation of heart and soul that that flourishes like it's so funny, given our day and age, a virus is the thing that comes to mind. But you know, that just an epidemic of love, an epidemic of connection and consciousness and presence. What about that? You know, maybe there's a transmission of an evolutionary awakening, an evolutionary transmission of light and awareness. I just really truly think that we get to find new metaphors, because it's not the era of domination and control. In my hope and prayer, back to prayer, is coming to a close, to be able to have these the convergence of what we used to believe to be polarities, the lion and the lamb kind of thing. You know, the lion and the lamb don't lay down together because of warfare, spiritual or otherwise. You know, what happens is there's some kind of shift of consciousness, shift of awareness that enables that. So I think we get to look at, you know, as I'm thinking about this whole warfare thing, you know, there are casualties of war, and those are justified. You know, this is not the case. It's part of the othering that we've been so conditioned to. And what happens when we allow ourselves to dissolve those notions of othering? You know, when we allow ourselves to find a way to connect all the dots. Thank you, Wendy. Wendy says, thank you for offering this alternate way of understanding the dynamic. Maybe part of the alchemy is a new language around this. I think that that's really true. I just realized it got late this morning and I have to run. And I have so much love and appreciation for you guys, and such gratitude for your engagement with this. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. Hi, Dido. So good to have you here with us. And Wendy says, a breaking down of old ego-dominated language. Exactly. We get to find new words. So until next time, so much love to you guys. I hope to see you again here really, really soon.